60,000 years is a number that means nothing until you have spent your life keeping it. I kept it. Not alone. No one keeps a number that size alone. But I was the 712th warden of the Meridian Vault. And by the time the sky over New Ashcroft opened, the number was mine to answer for. The vault sits 4 kilometers under the old riverbed, and I had not seen daylight in 3 years when the alarm came. Not a siren. Wardens don't get sirens. A single chime in the reading hall, soft as a dropped coin, and the words on the wall that every warden learns before they learn their own name. The choir has woken. I want to be honest about what I felt, not fear. Something closer to relief, and I was ashamed of that for exactly as long as it took me to reach the lift. 611 wardens before me had trained for a duty none of them performed. I would be the one who stood in the door when the cartographers came home. They had left us the way you leave a wound you don't expect to heal, quickly and without looking back. The old record calls it the severance. 60,000 years ago, the cartographers surveyed this world, judged the species on it unfinished, sealed the sky behind them, and moved on to catalog better prospects. They did not conquer us. They didn't need to. They simply closed the file and left a seed of themselves in orbit, dormant, to come back one day and confirm we died the way unfinished things usually do. They were not wrong to expect it. Most worlds like ours don't survive being written off. What they didn't know, what no departing power ever knows, is that abandonment, kept correctly, is not the end of a species. It is an assignment. The first warden of the Meridian Vault was a woman named Daisy Solomon, and she did not build a shrine to what we'd lost. She built a school. Every generation after hers inherited one plain instruction: remember exactly, prepare completely, and never let the memory curdle into either despair or vengeance. The archive was never a museum. I understand that now, in a way no warden before me had cause to. It was a training ground, disguised as a library, and we had been training in it for 60,000 years. The lift took 11 minutes to climb from the vault to the surface hatch. I spent them the way every warden is taught to spend them, reciting the reading, not to memorize it, that had happened decades ago, but to make sure my voice would hold. Somewhere around the 4th minute I thought of Warden 609, who trained me, and who used to say that the reading was the easiest part of the duty, and the climb was the hardest, because the climb was the only part where a warden was allowed to be afraid. She never got to make it. She died 3 winters before I was raised to the seal, in the ordinary way people die, having spent 40 years keeping a record for a knock at the door that hadn't come yet. I carried that with me in the lift, not as grief exactly, more as a kind of ballast. 611 of us had kept this promise on faith alone. I was only the one standing there when it was finally called due. The hatch opened onto a service plaza on the skirt of New Ashcroft, and I had to stop walking for a moment, the way you stop when a held breath finally goes out of you. I had grown up under artificial light, in rooms the size of my own devotion, and I had still somehow forgotten what the city looked like from ground level in full day. The towers of New Ashcroft don't end where the eye expects them to. They keep going, folding into orbital rings that cross the noon sky like slow silver rivers. Above the rings, in a lane cut through the clouds for exactly this purpose, 3 warships held position, kilometers long, dark-hulled, unhurried, the way something is unhurried when it has never once needed to hurry. Between the towers and the ships, threading it all together, the defense grid pulsed faint gold, visible only if you knew to look for it. I knew to look for it. Every warden does. The choir vessels came down through that lane like they were being escorted, though nothing had touched them. 6 ships, older in design than anything in our own sky, their hulls scarred in patterns that read less like damage and more like scripture. They landed in the open ring beyond the plaza, and the vanguard came out on foot. I had studied the cartographers my whole life, from drawings and half-recovered records, and the drawings had not prepared me. They were tall in a way that seemed to cost them something. joints doubling back at angles that looked borrowed rather than grown, their skin a deep report gray that shifted faintly with what I would later understand was breath. They wore no armor I recognized as armor, more like formal vestments plated for war, the plating almost an afterthought to the ceremony of it. Their leader stopped at the edge of the ring and looked up. I watched the exact moment the realization landed. It did not happen all at once. First the towers, then the rings, then, longest of all, the warships, dark and patient, and clearly not a defense, scrambled in panic, but a permanent fixture of an ordinary sky. I saw the leader's throat vents flare, and still, flare, and still, the alien equivalent, I would learn, of a held breath that keeps failing to release. Whatever report they had filed 60,000 years ago, this was not what it had promised them. I was the one who walked out to meet them, because that has always been the warden's duty, and because no one else in New Ashcroft would have known what to say. Soldiers stood along the ring's edge, still, weapons lowered but not stowed. Nobody moved to fight. Nobody needed to. The cartographer leader spoke first, in a voice like stone settling. It asked, more or less, how this had happened. Not a threat, a genuine question, and underneath it, something almost wounded, the sound of an old certainty breaking. I gave them the reading. It is not a boast, and it was never written as one. It is the plain record, kept exact across 611 wardens, the years of famine after the severance, when we could have turned on each other, and chose instead to ration memory alongside food. The centuries we spent relearning sciences, we'd been judged too young to keep. The discipline codified into law, that no generation was permitted to forget why it was building what it built, or to build only for comfort when the debt of the severance was still unpaid. I read them the names of wardens who died in the depths of the vault, protecting nothing more dramatic than a record no one else believed mattered yet. I read them the plain fact that we had not prepared to punish our makers. We had prepared only to no longer be a species someone else got to file and forget. When I finished, the leader was silent long enough that the soldiers along the ring shifted their weight, once, in unison. Then it asked what judgment we intended. I told them the truth, because the reading only means something if the warden who gives it still believes it, that we had not spent 60,000 years building an answer to hurt them with. We had spent it building an answer to never again need one. I told them they could leave the way they came, unharmed, and that the ships above them would not so much as track their exit vector once they cleared the outer ring. I told them, too, what we would not extend a second time, if the cartographers, or anyone wearing their old authority came back with different intentions. The leader looked at me the way you look at something you filed as finished and now have to reopen. Then it did something none of the old records had prepared me for. It bowed. Not deeply, not in surrender, but in the particular incline reserved, in their vestments' old grammar, for an equal. They left within the hour. I stood in the ring until the last choir vessel cleared the lane between the towers, and only then did I let my legs remember how tired 11 minutes of climbing and a lifetime of readiness could make a person. I am the 712th warden of the Meridian Vault, and I am, as far as the record shows, the first one who ever had to close the file the cartographers opened on us. I did not close it with fire. I closed it the way Adazi Solomon always meant for it to close, with a species that remembered exactly what had been done to it, and chose, from a position of complete and unmistakable strength, to answer with nothing crueler than the truth. That is the entry I filed that night, the only one of its kind in 60,000 years of the archive. I wrote it plainly, the way I had been trained to write everything. Then I went back down into the dark, to keep the record for whoever comes after me, in case the cartographers, or something like them, ever doubt again what they will find here.